You hear the screeching of an owl, you hear the wind begin to howl. You know there's zombies on the prowl, and it's terror time again. They've got you running through the night. It's terror time again, and you just might die of fright. It's a terrifying time.
Hello everyone. Today we're taking a journey into the map mod known as Raven Creek, created by David Blaine. But before we begin our deep dive into the Horde, I want to give a shout out to the artist Katophoenix for a lovely artwork. Now let's begin. We don't go to Raven Creek anymore, not since the zombies infested it. Raven Creek is a proper city. Like, you think West Point is big? Oh no. West Point has nothing on Ravens Creek. It's got a lot of sites, and much like any good city, it's got a lot of the dead. We've got apartments and high-rises that go up 5-6 stories like proper large buildings, and the map is just filled with these. There's also a ton of custom buildings, homes, and more just scattered into the different regions. You've got your typical suburbs that are located more on the outskirts of town, just waiting for someone to break into their homes and scavenge for all sorts of goodies. Now, before I go into a highlight reel of the entire town, I want to mention that there is some visual bugs. Some textures don't like to load or function correctly, and as such are replaced with a bunch of mysterious red question marks floating into the sky. It's pretty damn trippy if you ask me, but with a project this large, it's understandable for a few errors to crop up here or there. Now let's do a rundown of many of the sights and screams of Raven Creek. You ever get bored of the little pharmacies and home clinics found in the base Zomboid? Well, there's several large hospitals hidden throughout this city, and they are proper hospitals. Tall, towering buildings filled with medical supplies, patient wards, and plenty of zombies hidden around each corner. I'm talking like, you better watch out, because not only is the exterior going to be filled, but the interior as well, if you ain't lucky. But hey, let's just be glad we aren't check-in for a stay at, say, Akamilla Hospital. Let Harry deal with those nurses instead. There's actually a fairly large military and police presence in Ravens Creek. Near the base game entrance to the world, there's actually an internment camp, which is unsurprisingly filled with the dead. Likely either infected they were rounding up, or a survivor camp that went to shit when one of the survivors turned and started gnawing on the others. There's also military blockades and choke points, set up near, say, major bridges and such, in an effort to slow and halt the tide of the damned. There's also fairly large police stations in here with matching armories. Though I'm not sure how good these armories will really help you given you start firing off some rifles or shotguns in the city, and every last Zed head in the area is gonna be so far up your ass, we're gonna need the jaws of life to remove them. Surf on, dude. Like, let's hit the waves, man. Being a port city, it's gonna have a beach. You ever want some multi-story waterfront property? Well, it's yours if you can make it through the hordes of the undead. Enjoy the nice sand, the waves, and the ocean's plentiful supply of fish. Just don't get dragged under by the hordes enjoying them as well. If you're feeling too lazy to even walk outside to fish, well, don't worry, some of the beachfront homes have pools in them, and pools you can also fish from for added hilarity. But this scene's pretty fishy if you ask me. This part of town is on the western edge of town and eventually connects to the bridge, and the bridge hides all sorts of goodies on the other island. Are you religious? Or maybe you just enjoy Warhammer's fanaticism a little too much. If so, maybe this will serve as your home. A large cathedral, sadly not mounted to a giant Emperor-class Titan, but surrounded by wrought iron fences and 3 stories tall, while also being filled with a variety of loot. The bottom floor has your service area, your pews, your podium, maybe a couple dead worshippers, or maybe even a wedding reception looking for the food service, and you just rang the dinner bell. The second floor has a few private religious chambers. Maybe Father McFeely wants to have a nice private session with little Timmy. and there's also a couple additional break rooms on each side. The third floor, however, is a bit more interesting, with a large storage room that generates plenty of hardware-based loot, as well as a good-sized kitchen area with lots of cabinets and mini fridges for food. But keep in mind there is no stove, so you'll need to bring your own heat source. And finally, a cozy little office to hang out in. Maybe make a desperate last stand, maybe play with your Warhammer minifigs, or maybe just fling yourself to the pavement while you make your peace with God before the zombies close in and gnaw on your corpse. Okay, so maybe the beach isn't your cup of tea. Well, how about a large port filled with cargo containers, warehouses, and the undead? Now, this is located on the other landmass across the bridge, so keep that in mind. There is a large dock, which could be a gold mine and loot, and a safe haven. Now, one downside is the cargo containers are empty. I cracked open a few and there was nothing at all. But hey, even still, you could connect them together to form a makeshift city on the docks, and that'd be pretty damn cool in my opinion. Not to mention there's a large river to fish from and plenty of area for everyone once multiplayer comes back. There is one major bridge in this area, and it connects the two land masses. This bridge is a dangerous place. You're not gonna fit a vehicle through here at all, especially due to how tight the bridge is, the amount of derelict cars, the ungodly amount of zombies on the bridge, and the fact you'd have to destroy several walls with a sledgehammer to even fit a vehicle onto the bridge, and then have the propane torch break down a bunch of wrecks to get through. I did notice it does spawn military zombies, however, and these are a good source of military grade equipment. But the biggest thing about the bridge is there's one area across the water that is king, above all others, and it's my favorite area hidden away in this little slice of heaven. I'm calling this place Outer Heaven in honor of Metal Gear. I call it Outer Heaven for the reason that it's a very large walled, I'd say fortress, but complex is more fitting. It's sprawling with multiple levels and everything one could look for in a base. It's completely walled off from the outside world. Well, outside of the one hole you'll have to shatter to get in. It's got tons of resources, food, drink, indoor gardens that can be repurposed to grow crops instead of grass and trees. On the top floor, there's two large apartment suites that could serve an entire team well. There's also a large variety in the loot, including military and weaponry, as there's guard towers that could be raided. The biggest danger, though, is the large amount of dead inside. Given from the graffiti on the outside and the shutter gates that block the only entrances, this was likely a military evacuation camp and was being kept as secure as possible, and likely went to chaos when a few survivors quietly turned, killing their fellow survivors and just eating all of their flesh, eventually killing off the one safe haven. If you could clear it out, however, you've got a fantastic holdout in the Sea of the Dead. A fantastic and creative map mod with plenty of unique buildings, landmarks, and environments. I love how diverse this world is. You've got rural areas, suburban areas, and then massive urban sprawls just filled with the undead. Buildings with walkways that crisscross the land. The road into town, which is the way you'd enter if you spawned in, say, Muldraw or some other vanilla part of the game, is a literal barricaded checkpoint filled with broken down cars, hordes of the undead, and a gas station hotel that'll serve as your entrance to hell. Now, given how many checkpoints and choke points that are in this city, a vehicle is not the most useful in this map, especially if you're trying to cross from one major region to another, as they tend to be walled and blocked off, with either climbable walls or entrance just large enough for a person to squeeze through. As this is a large urban city, do not expect the game to go light on you with the zombies. There's a lot of them and they will try to get your ass. I know I spawned in a rural area outside of town, and I still had to fight off like 10-15 zombies before I even had a foothold. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there are some visual bugs. logs, where some textures, what looks like something may be supposed to be burnt as the ground below it is visually blackened, there's just a bunch of mysterious red question marks flying away into the sky, which is leaving me with questions myself. Overall, I do very much like the map mod. If you want a more realistic city to challenge yourself with, then give this map a whirl. You did a great job, David Blaine. This wraps up the video, and I'll see you next time. Peace out.